We've got Matthew in North Carolina talking about, I'm not completely sure I understand this, Matthew. Tell us, you're calling about the God placebo effect that's given your dad some strength?
Correct. I appreciate you taking my call.
Sure.
Watched you for several years now. Thank you, Seth and Matt. Back in late 2015, my father was diagnosed with bone cancer. Early 2016, he had some procedure done. He died on the table for a little bit. They brought him back. And at that moment, they told my mom and my dad that he wouldn't be here come Christmas 2016. My wife and I at the time were building a house. And with that information, we decided to put a bedroom and a bathroom downstairs so that when my father passed, that my mom would come and live with us. Well, I believe that through his faith, it has allowed him to kind of carry on, take some experimental procedures, and he is now still around, pushing 4 years later. And I guess I just wanted to get both of your takes on that. I guess for lack of a better word, I just wanted to call it the God placebo effect, that I think that through his faith, that he kind of got the inner strength to keep pushing on and keep surviving rather than giving up.
I'm kind of confused because you said he was taking experimental treatments, and why aren't we crediting the experimental treatments instead of the God?
No, I think his point is that the hope that he got from his faith prompted him to pursue solutions and led him into seeking experimental treatments. Did I read that right?
Yes. Yeah, because he had bone cancer and they didn't think he'd be around for Christmas of 16. And I think it is through his faith that it kind of pushed him to try and be here a little bit longer rather than just sit and say, well, I'm doomed, and take whatever fate happened to him.
It kept him from giving up.
Kind of your feedback on this. Correct. Like, oh, I'm going to die. Yeah, there's nothing I can do. And I think his faith gave him strength to push on.
First of all, we know that placebos, that there is a placebo effect. In fact, some studies have shown that placebos affect people 30%. But what we're talking about here isn't a placebo effect. You're essentially saying his faith led him to want to stay here longer, and this had him pursue experimental treatments, and now he's been here for several years longer than was anticipated. The problem is,
correct. Mm-hmm.
What faith has he got? What religious view does he have? Because if I knew that I was terminal and about to go to heaven, why would I want to stay
here? I think for the family, you know, I was actually raised Catholic as well. And so he is a devout Catholic, and at least we were raised that family is extremely important.
Yeah, but is it more important than God? And doesn't God have a plan?
You'd have to ask him that. But I was just wondering what you thought about people gaining strength through religion.
I honestly, that's the reason I'm making this point, is because I don't think that's as much the case as people suspect. I suspect what keeps anybody, like if anybody with a terminal diagnosis, what keeps them wanting to continue living is A, the connections that they have with people who are here alive, which has nothing to do with religion. B, the general desire and the programming of our ancestors to have us do the sorts of things that encourage our survival as a secondary source. And quite frankly, I don't know that, depending on the nature of religion, I mean, it's one of those things like maybe, you know, if you had, well, you're not allowed to kill yourself because God will, you know, send you to hell then. And if God put doctors here and gave them medical treatment, you're supposed to do that. This is a hardship. You can make those kind of arguments, but I think that it's really being human and wanting to stay alive that is probably the biggest factor in someone seeking treatment. And I think that religion is more likely to make some people give up comfortably than fight to stay.
Okay.
I
can see
I
that.
don't know.
Definitely.
Don't you find though that people with a heaven believers in the afterlife, are often the ones you find that are most afraid of death? I mean, I found a lot of people, and they talk wistfully about heaven and eternity and joy and bliss and perfection and color and music. But when it comes down to it, they're terrified of dying. They live fearful lives. They lock their doors and load their handguns and those types of things. So, my experience has not been that, somebody who is faced with death in the framework of God belief is comforted by heaven. I think that's a story that they often tell themselves. There may be a measure of comfort, but when the chips are down, their survival instincts are as strong as anybody else. They want to live. Now, what's harder for me, Dr. Andy Thompson's he's a psychiatrist, an author, an activist. He's done a lot of writing about the placebo effect. And this is harder for me. Someone's in a hospital and you go and you put your hand on them, you grab them by the hand, and there's the act of praying, the scenario that causes, in many cases, a physiological change, like a brain chemistry change, because they are having an experience. Call it prayer, call it whatever. And it's driven by God belief. Like they literally think they are being imbued with supernatural whatever. If that produces an actual physiological result, is there merit to the action, even if it's rooted in a lie? That's harder for me. I tend to think that we shouldn't have to lie to ourselves in order to give comfort and motivate people to press on and press through. I think the ill consequences, the negative consequences of embracing superstition far outweigh any of the benefits. And I think that the motivation, inspiration that your father's receiving, when it all boils down to it, no matter what the window dressing says, are likely, as Matt said, rooted in human beings, the things that we don't need the superstitious backstory for.
I'm reminded of the statement from Weinberg, which is normally used in a different context, which is without religion, good people would do good things and bad people would do bad things. And it takes something like religion to get good people to do bad things. And I think there's a way to twist that or adjust it for this. And that is, there's some segment of the population that faced with a terminal diagnosis are going to fight to stay alive. And it's without any influence from a religion. And there are others who are going to give up. And there's some portion that could go either way. And I think that the case could be made that religion, particularly versions of Christianity, could easily be manipulated to get someone to give up or fight. But that by and large, the people who are likely to, it's really hard to get someone who would be a fighter in that circumstance to give up without appealing to something like religion.
But let's say you're in the hospital and you're at least a marginal believer, and I come in and I pray for you. We have that like a very personal experience, and I'm showing compassion. I'm participating in an exercise which has an end goal of you being restored and healed. You feel that you are given attention, you are given love, you are given all these things. And so there may be a physiological change somehow. What if it actually motivates you to keep on kicking? I think maybe his question, Matthew, would your question be, is there some utility in the exercise itself, even if it's not true? Would that be accurate?
Yeah, and I just wanted to get you guys' feedback. On a side note, I have not come out to my father. And the irony of this whole pandemic is the conversations my sister and I have had back and forth. I found out maybe 2 months ago she's an atheist too.
Isn't that wild? To think you're the only person in a family, yeah. And it kind of reminds me, because it's happened to me once or twice too. Sorry, I'm not going to be outing my other family members, but it's one of those things like first starting to date someone, or when you're interested, so you're like toss some things out as like, hey, what do you think? Are you into you do this? We do the same thing with intellectual stuff. It's like I'm on the outside as an atheist, so I'm going to maybe drop some hints that maybe I'm this, and then all of a sudden, boom, the floodgates open.
One thing I have used on my father is he's an Italian, so he's got a nice temper. Even at his age, he's he'll be 86 in a few weeks. And he will get very elevated in his temper. And one thing, I come back to him and I will say, that is not very Christian-like. And he calms down.
I come back. Let me recommend a book to you. It's called Why We Believe in God. It's a small book, paperback, by Dr. Andy Thompson, Thomson. You can digest it in an evening, if that. And he gets into a lot of this sort of how we experience. I think one of the examples I've heard him use is communal music. When people come together in church, I'll start there, and they join hands and they sing songs together, there's actually a physiological change. There's something that changes, and we are affected physically by it as human beings. And this makes the worship experience in church very, very powerful, right? The endorphins are rushing, the emotions are there, it binds people, it brings them together. But they also discovered that you can have the same effect by singing another non-religious beloved song in a communal experience. And I think in this example might lie the answer to our question. Do we have to lie to ourselves or other people to do the meaningful things that we do for each other? Human touch and compassion, empathy, listening, showing love, giving gifts, being charitable, those things, that's not a religious exercise, it's a human one. Do we really have to add all the backstory to it? I think probably not. I think we could actually produce those changes, that effect, without having to attach anything magical to it. That's kind of where I fall, for what it's worth.
Definitely.
Sort of like just going to a country or rock concert.
Yeah. Some of my favorite moments. Now, granted, I stood in church from the age of 5 onward until, much later in life than I probably should have. And I would stand there, and as we sang, I would feel elation and goosebumps and euphoria. And of course, the people around me would say, you're experiencing the Holy Spirit. And with nothing else to credit it to, I'm going to agree with them. I felt the Holy Spirit. I felt it move. And then I discovered that I could have similar experiences through purely secular music, art, sex, drugs, all sorts of things, similar qualities of experiences, even if they're not identical. And it's why some of my, like if you watch something like Live Aid or some massive concert where, a huge song is being sung from the stage, but this crowd of 20 to 50,000 is also singing along. When Freddie Mercury's got the entire audience in his hand and getting them to do whatever he wants, or when Bono was doing Bad and then adds other songs in it and gets the songs, I feel that, and I wasn't even there. Imagine how it would feel if you were there. Like I can sit here right now and just go, wow, that's just awesome. It's amazing. And so it's not surprising that we feel stuff like that in religious contexts. It's just not the religion that's doing it. It's who we are as human beings and how music affects us. So.
I watched a debate that you did, and towards the end of the debate, you did I want to live in a world, blah, blah, blah. I want to live in a world that, and just reeled off a whole bunch of examples. And to be honest, I was, quote unquote, I guess the Matt Holy Spirit that I received when I heard you just reel those off.
I kind of remember that. So one of the things is I don't tend to write the things that I'm saying most of the time. I don't have a script for videos. I never have a script for the show. And quite often I don't have a script for debates. I'll have some opening remarks, and what I'll do is I'll jot down some other stuff. And I remember that closing remark. I don't remember which debate it was, but the closing remark I remember writing ahead of time. So that wasn't fully spontaneous. I wish I could remember what debate it is, because it might be worth clipping out and sharing. But it's
if you find the link, send it to us.
Someone put something together today, or I saw today, where they had a bunch of news clips where they zoomed in it, and your voiceover was in the background of, I want to live in a world where X, Y, Z. And
I'd love to see that and share it. I'd love to see that, and I'd love to share it, except that I don't want this show to be, what's the coolest thing Matt ever said, and can we put it in? I want to get on to some other callers and see if we can help some people today. But I greatly appreciate your call, Matthew, and I hope that you find a way to, share the whatever time your father has left in a way that's positive and beneficial to both of you, even if you ultimately don't come out.
Correct. All right. Well, I appreciate you taking my call.
Yeah, thanks a lot.